WWE Hall of Famer Booker T once said this man could have been an Intercontinental Champion, a United States Champion, even a World Heavyweight Champion. Who am I talking about? Believe it or not, it's Elix Skipper.
Skipper was a hell of a talent. He was one of those guys, man, that can go out in the ring and just work.
However, Booker T's idea on how he would have made Elix Skipper a star is dumb. Somehow it's even worse than Skipper finding himself in Diamonds in the Rough alongside David Young, which was terrible. His idea, well, here it is. I'll just play it for you.
The Skipper of Elix.
It sounds like some stupid thing Booker T would have had in his court, some fiefdom on SmackDown circa 2007. The thing about Elix Skipper, though, is he probably needed something character-wise or charisma-wise. It wasn't that he was a complete black hole. It's certainly not Bobby Lashley and ECW bad, but he never really got that coaching and that direction he needed to be the star that a lot of people think he could have been in the wrestling business. But before we understand that, we need to take a look back at his career. So, Tim, where does Elix Skipper even get started in professional wrestling?
Well, he was originally a kickboxer for about 10 years, it seems. And then he went to Atlanta to try out with the WCW Power Plant, which was pretty revolutionary at the time, that they were just picking guys off the street and training them. And that's pretty much what happened here. He did 8 months of training. He was actually in one of the biggest or one of the best WCW training classes they had, which pretty much anyone who was on TV in the 2000s that was a young guy came out of the Power Plant. Elix Skipper was one of them. However, though, we were talking about bad gimmicks, and he was given a very weird name to start. When he first came on TV, he was under his real name of Elix Skipper, and then they started to call him Skip Over, which made no sense. I mean, he only had that name for one show, though.
Mr. Skip Over!
Skip Over, it sounds like someone had an issue with their 6-disc CD changer in the back of their Mercedes, and they were like, hey, that's a name, that's a gimmick, boss.
Yeah, good thing he only kept it for a day, or I guess for one show, because really, I think it's on a Thunder, and that was it. And then he switched back to his name, and he was doing a whole bunch of really cool high-flying moves. Again, still didn't really have a gimmick, just kind of doing high-flying moves, being in the cruiserweight. He did kind of have a feud with The Artist, which is another gimmick that we could really go into as well, where he had a mini feud with him because of the artist's valet, which was Paisley, who was Queen Charmel. It didn't really go anywhere either, and maybe lasted a couple of weeks. I think they had like one match, and that was it.
Spoiler alert, WCW is going to do the same thing with Elix Skipper, only next time with the cat a few months after this. I mean, it is basically the same thing, except you swap out Paisley for Mrs. Jones? Was it Mrs. Jones? I don't even remember, but yeah, WCW just recycling creative.
Oh, you remember me? I said I was going to take your girl and your pride.
Take my pride.
That's right.
And that's, yeah, I mean, that might have been the best thing for him, honestly, because he had nothing else really to do. The best thing, though, was when he got together with Lance Storm and he was doing Team Canada. Then he was actually given some sort of a gimmick where he was a CFL player, but that really didn't make any sense because they said he was American, but then they made up a whole story about it. But, you know, it actually did give him some character, though. And yes, he has his terrible theme song that he comes out to, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment, but he comes out to his terrible theme song and he's talking and he's doing stuff and he's actually getting on TV, which is good because that's really the main goal for a lot of the young guys who were going through the Power Plant, was to get on TV, not just to be a jobber, but to get on TV, actually have a gimmick. And I guess one of my favorite things is when he faced Goldberg. Obviously, it's always fun when somebody gets to face Goldberg, and Goldberg and him have a fantastic squash match, except man, did Goldberg give him just the most ugliest slam I've ever seen. It wasn't even like a power bomb. He just took his leg, picked him up, and threw him down, almost like he was a sack of, I don't know, balls or I don't know. It was just, it was insane the way the slam was. I was just very surprised that Skipper got up after that. But that was probably one of the main things I remember from his time in WCW, him getting just demolished by Goldberg.
There was that. And then at some point during this time, Elix Skipper becomes, well, we know it as the Cruiserweight Championship, but Lance Storm had rechristened it the, 115 kilogram and under championship or whatever he was doing. Yeah, just renaming belts for this to Canadianize them. I suppose Canadianize them with an S, not a Z, because that's how they spell. I don't know. Let's not focus on that. There's another interesting moment because Team Canada, it was really strong early on, and then the next thing you know, Jim Duggan's in there, and they're just constantly fighting the Misfits in action. It gets off the rails, and Elix Skipper is kind of fighting some battles, and then he finds himself left alone one fateful night, and he's got to defend that. It's not the Cruiserweight Championship, but we're just going to call it that for the video. He's got to defend that belt against not one, but two guys with a stipulation that, Tim, I know you love the stipulation.
Yes, it's a power bomb match. Now, it would be okay if the other two people he was facing were people who were his size. You got Mike Sanders there, who's, I guess, his size. I think Sanders is a little bit smaller. And then his tag team partner is Kevin Nash, who is impossible to get up for anything. I don't think a normal person, if you told Kevin Nash, hey, I'm going to slam you, I think Nash would not do it, because I don't think I've ever seen Nash take a power slam or a suplex or, in fact, a power bomb, which is what this match was, a power bomb match. So, yeah, it made it pretty impossible for Elix Skipper to win this match. And I didn't even really care about the match, honestly. Once I heard the stipulation was when I kind of just zoned it out of my head. But I know that you kind of watched it for, there's other things involved in this.
It's a segment that sounds really stupid. I'll give you that. And the outcome is stupid. I can't even lie about that. Yet I was actually surprised when you go back and watch it. I'm surprised about two things. One, I forget how much I just hate Mike Sanders. The above average Mike Sanders gimmick is so, I don't even have words for it. It's grating, but not in the good way. It's not a heel you want to hate. It's just like, why is this guy who looks like me? Like, why is this just generic man who could be Joe anyone in the ring right now? And he's not even dressed to wrestle. I'm pretty sure Mike Sanders is in khakis. So Elix Skipper comes out. Elix Skipper gives a hell of a fiery babyface performance here. He's really giving it to him. I'm surprised how much Kevin Nash actually bumps for Elix Skipper. He takes a drop kick from Elix Skipper. There's a lot of stuff here that really leads you to believe they're going to do something. I mean, Kevin Nash wasn't someone who was taking bumps for anyone, even if it was a drop kick. It was a kind of a special thing. So to see Skipper get in some moves on, well, Mike Sanders, of course, but also Kevin Nash, you kind of were led to believe that the company believed in him at least somewhat, or maybe it was even Kevin Nash, because, you know, Kevin Nash did like to work with certain guys and give certain guys shine that he liked. Not everyone, but some guys he liked. So it felt like this was a moment that could have gone somewhere, that could have built Elix Skipper up, because you listen to the crowd and they're kind of into him. And the next two Elix Skipper matches, so this was a Nitro. After this, WCW goes on one of those Australia tours. Skipper beats Billy Kidman. I think he beats Rey Mysterio. Even for WCW in 99 and 2000, pretty big scalps to beat Kidman and Mysterio. So you kind of think, all right, there's some momentum behind him, and this just sort of comes to a screeching halt.
And that's sort of the thing that happens with a lot of things in Skipper's career that we're going to kind of explain here, where he's kind of getting shot up and then something happens and he gets sputtered back down. It's kind of like the game in Price is Right, the hiker, where he's kind of moving up and then you guess something wrong and he moves down the ladder. That's kind of like what happens here. He kind of moves up with a match or a title, and then he loses, and then they kind of forget about him, and then he just kind of languishes down. So, and that's pretty much what happened here. He lost the Cruiserweight title belt. He kind of languishes around for most of the end of the 2000s. And then in early 2001, they have a WCW Cruiserweight tag team title, which actually was pretty cool at the time. I mean, that's a pretty inventive idea. And the matches were great. And he was teaming with Kid Romeo, who was another newer kind of guy who had more of a gimmick than Elix Skipper did, which is
they were strippers, or I don't even know what they were. I think they were supposed to be heartthrobs, but it really came off the stripper. They gave some serious stripper vibes. But I mean, hey, like,
at least that's some sort of gimmick, though. That is some sort of gimmick that he has. I get it; it's a stripper gimmick, but at least it's something.
They worked really well together. I mean, that entire, as you said, the Cruiserweight tag team scene in WCW in 2001 was really awesome. And they win the belts. I think they lose those belts on the very last Nitro. You can correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, they win it at the pay-per-view, which is a week and a half or 8 days before the company closes. And then the next week on the final Nitro, they lose the tag belts. So he does have the recognition of being the first ever WCW Cruiserweight Tag Champion, but there's only been 2 of them in the history of the belt, and they never brought the titles back in WWE, which they probably could have because they had a bunch of guys there to do it, but they never brought it back. So at least he's got that. Like I said, he's won belts, he's won feuds, he's in things, but yet he's just never really he's never really like put up a pedestal. He's kind of just like he's almost there, and then he just gets faded away. So that's kind of the situation that happens here. And then the worst thing to happen in wrestling in the last like 30 years was WCW going away, because that really hurt him here. Because once WCW went away, ECW was also gone as well. So you just had WWE, who bought pretty much all the contracts of everyone who was there. Elix Skipper went to Heartland Wrestling for a bit and didn't really do too much there. WWE didn't even bring him on TV at all. He wasn't even ever on like a Saturday night show like Jacked or Metal or whatever those were called. He was never even on that. They put anyone on those shows. I mean, you had Canyon on there for a bit. Billy Kidman showed up for a bit. They would put anyone on, and they didn't put Elix Skipper on. So that's kind of telling when you can't even make it as a jobber on one of WWE's shows. So he ended up leaving WWE. He kind of did some indies here, and then he would jump in with TNA. And TNA, at this point, at the beginning, they were looking for anybody who had a name, anybody who was good, and anybody that could help them. So if you were a name, they'd put you on the show. They'd give you something to do. And that's pretty much what they did with Elix Skipper. They gave him something to do. He had fun matches. He had a cocky gimmick.
I'm pound for pound the best athlete in the world, bar none. And if you don't believe me, ask Red.
All the stuff that he was doing in WCW, except he wasn't promoting Canada. He was just promoting himself being an all-star, and and that was great. But the best thing for him was when he eventually got to team up with Daniels and Low-Ki and Triple X and be in Sports Entertainment Extreme, which I'm going to say the full name. I'm not going to do its short form name here. So he was in Sports Entertainment Extreme.
You're going to Mike Tenay it for us. You're going to do the Mike Tenay.
I'm going to Mike Tenay that whole conversation because I don't want to talk about Sports Entertainment Extreme. But that was the best thing for him here. He was in Triple X, and it was the best run because he was managed to have great matches. He got to team with Daniels and Low-Ki, or one of the two. They had some great matches. They had a big match, actually, where it was Triple X and I believe AJ Styles, and they faced Jarrett, Dusty, and the Road Warriors. Like, when are you ever going to be able to face the Road Warriors in your career? And he managed to do it here. So now Triple X has the tag belts, and they really did improve this tag division because it was basically just AMW facing any other tag team that they could do. So AMW Triple X was a great tag team feud that they had. It really helped them improve the tag team division. And that would lead into the first cage match, AMW versus Triple X at TNA pay-per-view number 51. And boy, is it a hell of a match.
You'd assume this would be an X Division style match because you have Daniels, you have Elix Skipper, but this is really, I think, more in the style you would relate to America's Most Wanted, who are still, they're pretty big in TNA, but they're still finding their footing. They aren't what they're going to be a few years down the road. And I was just really surprised watching this today on... It's a violent match. It's a bloody match. It's a bloody cage match. It's not what you would expect to find Elix Skipper in, or even Christopher. I mean, Christopher Daniels can do that sort of thing, but this wasn't what you were expecting from Triple X at this time, who were the high flyers. But both of these teams bring out something in each other. And even going back and watching this sort of build up, this was probably one of TNA's best early feuds. It really delivered on a lot of different levels. And even though Daniels and Skipper aren't talking a lot, you get a slightly different dimension of their characters. We talked a lot about how Skipper didn't really get a chance to do stuff. He was just on TV. And this is that time where all of a sudden you're getting to invest more in Triple X and sort of understand what makes them tick. And then you just have America's Most Wanted, who are, the road cowboys doing their thing, and you just put them in a cage, and holy hell. And I mentioned it was violent, but also there were some crazy spots.
Both of them entailed Elix Skipper. So first he takes this vile suplex. I believe it's a suplex. It looks like a suplex off of the top of the cage. He's sitting on the cage, and then he gets suplexed off of it, and I don't remember who actually suplexes him off of it, but it didn't look good. It looked like he landed like on his lower back, which cannot feel good at all. And then later on in the match, he does a top of the cage cross body. So it leads into him doing the eventual spot that we all remember him for. But this crossbody off the top of the cage was a move that TNA would replay for the next year and a half or so, because it did look really awesome. I mean, he's literally almost hitting the ceiling at this point. He's just soaring through the air. So it looked great. You have Mike Tenay going nuts. You have Don West going absolutely insane, because I'm sure that was the first time he ever saw somebody do that, which made it even better as well. So the match, the match is bloody. The match is crazy. The match is pretty incredible. It's actually got a really interesting finish too, where Elix Skipper gets sent out of the cage. So AMW are just beating the hell out of Daniels 2-on-1 inside the cage and knocking him out, which I thought is a really interesting way of keeping the other guy out. So that was kind of cool. And AMW win the belts, and they will stay the tag team champions. But what happens after this is really what continues our story here with Elix Skipper.
There's this great tag match, and then the rug is sort of pulled out from under everything with Triple X, because it's reported that Skipper's contract expires. He was trying to negotiate a new one that never comes to pass. So Skipper just drifts away. There's never really any sort of satisfying resolution for the rest of that year, because that pay-per-view happened in towards the later end of that year. And then Skipper just kind of vanishes. There's no blow off. There's no feud. He's not doing anything with Daniels. He just disappeared.
Basically disappears. He's not on television anymore. And yeah, it's mostly because of the contract dispute that he has. Also the fact that TNA just doesn't have money to sign anybody at this point, really, unless you're a big name. Then they have money for you. But yeah, if you're some guy who's actually on TV a lot like Skipper, they don't really have money for you. So he completely disappears, ruins his whole momentum, and he would go over to Japan during the summer and fall of 2003. So that might be why he's not on TNA television. But also, he does have a new gimmick here in Japan, or we believe he has a new gimmick here in Japan. Because
I was about to say, or does he go to Japan?
Yes.
We don't know. Some individual who shares the physique of Elix Skipper and a lot of his moves, similar high-flying attributes, is in All Japan, but there's just this masked man going by Extreme Blade, or also sometimes Dark Guerrera, and you would think maybe it's Elix Skipper, but honestly, you look at his entrances and stuff like that, and it could be anyone, right, Tim?
Honestly, it could be. He comes down to the ring doing some sort of dance. People seem to like him. This is All Japan, though, in 2003. So there's really not a lot of people in attendance. This is kind of a bad time for All Japan. But I mean, Extreme Blade, Dark Guerrera, he's in All Japan for a good 6 months here. He gets to wrestle freaking Kojima, of all people. He's in a match with Satoshi Kojima and does a pretty awesome rope walk move in that match. So, I mean, he gets to have a lot of big matches against some big-time Japanese guys and actually get in the ring and show off some sort of gimmick that he has. Again, the gimmick is sort of kind of a stripper who wears a mask, I guess, because he's doing some weird dances. It's more of a gimmick that he would than he has in TNA, that's for sure.
I almost felt they were trying to make him like Blade, Wesley Snipes Blade, which would have been cool. And I mean, I think that's a gimmick he could have taken to America. And if you just look, I'm Blade, but instead of vampires or whatever Blade was up to, you just make it wrestlers. Yeah. This is neither here nor there, but I think when you look at him in All Japan, there are two things that I took away from his matches there that we watch, is that one, he can have a good complete match. You didn't see a lot of that in WCW, and even in TNA you get a lot of those rushed X Division, and they're cool to watch, they're fun to watch, but he tells a good story in a lot of his matches in All Japan, and you give him 11 and 12 minutes and you see the high flying, but you see some great mat work. You see some striking with his kickboxing background that you never always got in TNA. Like sometimes you'd get his striking, but he can do some amazing stuff in that regard as well. And just this charisma. He has a charisma. You can't help but take your eye, or you can't help but not take your eyes off him. There we go. And he has his time in All Japan. That eventually ends. He links back up with TNA on an improved deal, and this is really going to get to his career zenith and I mean, he links back up with Christopher Daniels almost right after returning.
Yeah, pretty much right after he returns, he links up with him as if nothing happened the last 9 months, just teaming back up with Daniels again. Daniels was in and out of TNA anyway at this time too, because he was doing Ring of Honor. He was doing other stuff as well. So, them teaming up again was kind of, whatever, but it's TNA. So you just kind of write it off, and they're teaming again. They're doing things. I believe they win the tag team belts again, and then they get into a feud with AMW, and this would set up for the match that happens at Turning Point 2004, which is another insanely interesting pay-per-view that I forgot about again, because Randy Savage is at this pay-per-view. It's supposed to be built up to the match, the 6-man match that Randy Savage is in, that he shows up for maybe a minute in. But I mean, this was a big pay-per-view that people wanted to watch. So the fact that AMW and Triple X get to headline this pay-per-view is pretty huge, because you have, like I said, a lot of people are interested in watching this pay-per-view for Randy Savage, and then you have a main event tag team cage match that just blows everyone away.
Yeah, let's stop and just highlight this again. This is the main event. This is given 20 plus minutes, and you really go into the full story because the stakes are really big. So it's not just the cage match, and the whole story was there was beef between the two sides from the previous cage match. Triple X comes back. You have America's Most Wanted, and it's decided that the losing team is going to have to split up. They can never tag again. That we'll ignore that for the time being. There is just a lot of intensity between the two sides. You get a different dynamic from Triple X. They're not just these guys doing cool moves. They're not just X Division guys. America's Most Wanted brought something out of them. I just remember watching this and watching both teams sort of walk out, and it just feels like a really big time deal. The sense of gravitas surrounding Daniels and Skipper was something I never quite remembered ever feeling around sort of X Division wrestlers around that time, because normally they're the spot guys, they're the fun guys. But this felt really serious, and once that bell rings, I mean, I'll let you talk about it, but because I was really almost left speechless from start to finish of this entire match.
Yeah, and also another thing too, like going into the match, it is supposed to be whoever loses can't team anymore. And it wasn't like everyone thought, oh, Triple X is going to lose, because Chris Harris was given kind of a push as a singles guy. They were really pushing him. So you might have thought that maybe they were going to lose this match, and Chris Harris is going to be moved up the ladder because he was given a TNA or an NWA championship match against Jarrett. He was teaming up with some of the top name guys. So you would have thought maybe that would have happened and maybe Triple X would have won. So like, there was a lot going in this match, and you really didn't know who was going to win when the match started. It wasn't like one of those things in wrestling where we're watching and you kind of know what's going to happen. I don't think a lot of us knew that what was going to happen here in this match. And the match shows how, crazy and how intense it was, because this was a pretty incredible match. The first match, I didn't mention this a lot, but there are tags in that first cage match. They have guys standing outside the ring and they get tagged, and they kind of do that for 3/4 of the match. This match, there are maybe a few tags in it, I believe, but otherwise they're kind of all in there just beating the crap out of each other for 20 plus minutes.
This match, of course, is remembered for really one moment and one moment only. And despite it being 21 plus minutes, the only thing anyone ever talks about is that cage walk, and it's something else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, not a lot of people could do it. It looks like a circus move, basically, where he's walking on a tightrope and then he just somehow jumps and hurricanranas a guy off of the cage. I mean, it's not a move that you would think of, and really, when it was being set up, you really didn't know what was happening either, because you mentioned this off camera, but he's setting up this move for a good 2 minutes where he's sitting on the cage. They're Daniels is holding him, and then you have to have Elix Skipper jump to the cage. Then Elix has got to get his balance. And you kind of saw this in the first cage match as well, where he's at the top of the cage to do that crossbody. And it takes him a good 30 seconds to get up there, balance, turn around, and jump. This is even harder, because not only does he have to get up there, he's got to balance. Then he's got to think about walking about 6 feet to the guy and jumping. It's like there's a lot of mechanics. There's a lot of calculus that goes into this. So, I mean, it's surprising that he got the move off It just took forever to get there.
It sure as hell did. And TNA loves replaying that highlight. It's on every best of TNA video from then to the end of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no one will ever talk about that 90 seconds leading up to it, which is just like the slowest 90 seconds of like, what are we doing here? The thing is, when you look at the cage walk, right, you could have taken that out of the match and you still have a great wrestling match. And funny enough, Daniels actually jumps off the cage after the Hurricane Rana with an elbow drop. But the match itself tells such a great story. And it, like I said, it's bloody, it's vicious. I mentioned that earlier. It's an incredible tag team match. Maybe TNA's best main event up until this point. I mean, because normally you're getting Jared and someone, and it's not particularly interesting. And this really highlighted how TNA was different from WWE at that time, where we're going to give these two up-and-coming tag teams a spotlight, and we're going to let them go out and do something incredible, and it delivered. Then Skipper gets pinned. America's Most Wanted win by using Triple X's finishing move, which doesn't even have a name at this point. I think Tenay refers to it as the powerbomb suplex, which that should be workshopped a little more, although it wouldn't matter because they were split up. They were done after this match. You get this sort of real moment of curiosity where nobody knows where it's going to go. It felt like this was a moment everyone was super behind Triple X, and you go to the crowd reactions, not just the cage walk reactions, but the entire reactions to them at this match, and they are super over, and that's it. They're done. It's over for Triple X. They're never going to tag team again. And Christopher Daniels goes on to do what he does, and he kind of had a built-in gimmick, but Elix Skipper, what was Elix Skipper without Triple X? He was just primetime, baby.
Yeah, primetime Elix Skipper. That's pretty much all he was. His next match after the cage match didn't happen until the New Year's Eve Impact. And this was when they were on Fox Sports Net. So they have the little ticker at the top of the screen that tells you how long the match is going on for. And this has got to be one of the weirdest matches I think I've ever seen. It honestly should be on our mystery match theater because this is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. So it's Skipper teaming up with the Naturals, who are a tag team that I could also go off in a tangent about. Yeah. And they face AJ Styles, not weird. Sonny Siaki, which is kind of weird because he was in and out of TNA as well. You didn't really see him too much. He was kind of pushed a lot at the beginning. And then by this point in late 03, no one really cared about him. And for some reason, Sonny Siaki at this point is teaming up with Johnny B. Bad. Yes, Johnny B. Bad from 1994 WCW is back in TNA. This is 8 years after he was Johnny B. Bad. It's Mark Marrow playing Johnny B. Bad, kind of.
And Mark Marrow, hold on. Mark Marrow hadn't been seen
in years.
When was Mark Marrow's last WWE appearance?
It must have been before 2000, or maybe just in, just after 2000, because Sable, his wife, who he was still married to, I believe, until about 2001 or 2002, she wasn't in WWE, midway through 99. And I believe they got rid of Mark Marrow around that same time. So he was not on TV for a good 6 or 7 years by this point.
Mark Marrow also in a famous powerbomb match where he gets powerbombed by his wife. Who saw that one coming? Hey-oh.
Yeah, I know. And she actually, she gave him a hell of a power bomb as well. This is actually a pretty good match. AJ Styles does all the heavy lifting, so that's why it's a good match. It's basically them beating up AJ Styles for a good 6 or 7 minutes, and then Siaki comes in for some reason, and then Johnny B. Bad wins the match with his own Hurricane Rana from the top rope. So it's funny enough that Johnny B. Bad wins this match. Obviously, they were kind of giving him the push, but Elix Skipper is like, I mentioned him at the beginning, but you don't even know he's in this match. I don't even think he makes it in this match more than maybe 30 seconds in the ring. And before he does a cool move where he jumps over, he does a cool, flipping kind of spin move. But other than that, he really doesn't do too much.
That is true. And Skipper's sort of lost for a while, when he's not in matches with Johnny B. Bad, there's no direction for him, right? Like no one really knows what to do with him, but things start to turn around He's in the Ultimate X title match. It's him, Ron Killings, AJ Styles, and Christopher Daniels. Now, this was the first time he and Christopher Daniels had really crossed paths since Triple X had broken up. So there was a built-in story there. AJ Styles is AJ Styles. I don't remember Ron Killings being a part of the X Division scene, but here he was. And they even talked about how this is a former two-time NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And the first elimination in this match is Elix Skipper pinning Ron Killings, and that felt like kind of a big deal. Then Christopher Daniels turns on him. Daniels is on his way to winning that X Division title in this match. So it sets up the next feud perfectly. You have former tag team partners. Daniels is the heel. He just turned his back on his former friend. You have Elix Skipper, who hasn't really been doing anything, but you could kind of do something with him in this. It was easy to build him up as a sympathetic figure. And it just I think scientifically you can say this storyline is...
Yeah, pretty much it's a big fart. They do the one match, I believe, and they do it at their cage pay-per-view. So the match is in a steel cage, but not because it needed to be in a steel cage. It's just because all the matches are in cages. So that's kind of lost as well. If you watch the match now, you're like, oh, look, they have a cage match between these two. This is a vicious, bloody feud, but really there's no viciousness in it whatsoever. It's just them having a match in a cage. It really should have been a lot bigger. They could have done this they could have done a feud between these two guys for a good year, just based on how they were teamed, how they have to be broken up. But no, they didn't do anything. They did 1 month, maybe two, and then Elix Skipper gets bumped down the ladder even more.
The fall of Elix Skipper is so fast. It is swift. He goes from this guy you think maybe he could be something, not a world's heavyweight champion or anything like that, but just a wrestler who could be an X Division champion, who can be someone who elevates that TNA roster, which they still needed at this time. And they did not give us that. They just oh man, I don't even know if I can say it.
You only have to say 4 words. Diamonds in the rough. That's it.
Diamonds in the rough. That is correct. So Skipper joins Diamonds in the Rough 8 months after that tag team championship match where he's broken up with Triple X. April is when he's fighting Daniels for the X Division title. So from April, the X Division title shot, to August, he's in Diamonds in the Rough, whose only existence, whose only reason d'etre is because David Young is on a 2-year-long losing streak, and Simon Diamond's like, I see something in that kid. That kid's gonna be a star under my tutelage. And then he was like, well, Elix Skipper, I think you've lost something. You don't have, and it just sucked.
Yeah, it's once you get to team with a guy whose only gimmick is, hey, he loses all the time, which that was what David Young's gimmick was. Every time he was on television, they said he hasn't won 30 matches, or he's lost 50 matches in a row, or I think he got up to 100 at one point before they actually let him win.
But I mean, Bizarro Goldberg. He was TNA's Bizarro Goldberg, and then they just Simon Dice's like, well, let's give this jobber a manager.
Yeah, let's give him a manager and let's have him team with Elix Skipper. And it's like, why? Why do we need to have David Young on television? There was no reason for it. David Young was on, I believe, the second TNA pay-per-view. And then he stays with the company for a good 3 or 4 years. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's great. He actually was a pretty good, wrestler in the ring. He just was a black hole of charisma. He's a guy who has a bald head, and he stands there with no, the smallest of tights. He didn't even wear a shirt. He didn't have a cool hairdo, nothing that makes him stand out whatsoever. And then you have him team with Elix Skipper. And it's wow. Once you saw that on television, you knew this is it. That was it. You might as well just release him now, because there's no point. You're never going to do anything with him.
They did not release him, no, because that Diamonds in the Rough thing, that goes on for years.
At least.
They barely win any matches. Every time they're on TV, you're just like, are we still doing this? This is still happening? Seriously?
That was my thought. Are they still doing this? I believe, yeah, like you said, it was a good year or so, because they feud with 3 Live Crew for a little bit. That's at least a feud with a name, with names, but it didn't get Diamonds in the Rough over. And I don't think it got 3 Live Crew over either. It didn't get anyone over. And I mean, Simon Diamond, I'm a fan of Simon Diamond. I believe you know Simon Diamond as well.
I could go either way.
You go either way. But I mean, like, I'm a fan because at least he can talk and he somehow gets random people over. Because I mean, if you watch Simon Diamond and ECW, man, did he have a group behind him and everyone knew who they were. They were the weirdest people, but everyone knew who they were because he always got them over. He did not get Diamonds in the Rough over at all. He tried a little bit and then no one cared. No one cared. And yeah, it was me literally saying what you're saying. Are they still doing this?
It goes on for 2 years and then like, I don't even know what happened to them. How does this end?
There is no end. Like they just kind of stop being a team. They're not really teaming on TNA as much. They're teaming on house shows. They're teaming in other promotions, but on TV, they're not on TV together, which is fine by me because I didn't need to see it anymore. By late 2007, early 2008, that's when Triple X comes back and you have
no. They are not allowed to come back. Like you are not telling me TNA let the team that was allowed. They expressly stated Triple X can never ever be a tag team again. They can never partner each other again. Are you telling me in less than 3 years that stipulation is all for naught?
Pretty much. They just reformed as a team again, except maybe they got out of it because Low-Key's not Low-Key anymore. He's now Senshi. So maybe because he changed his name, they're allowed to team up. Whatever the reason is, they end up teaming up again, and they do even less this time than they did the previous time. And this is 2007 TNA when a Triple X reunion could have been really cool. There were a lot of really good tag teams at this point. They lose to Latin American Exchange, which is a pretty good match. But otherwise, they're kind of just facing other X Division guys and they're not doing much. But then it all hits the fan here, basically, because they have a Feast or Fired match, which is everyone talks about how stupid this match is. It is really stupid. But Christopher Daniels loses the match, gets the pink slip, and is fired. He does come back as Curry Man, which is a whole other thing that we're not going to get into because
he's hot.
He's hot. He's spicy. And it was fun for a little bit, but I had no idea what was going on. But again, another thing there entirely. So with Daniels gone, you have Senshi and Elix Skipper teaming together, but Senshi is Senshi and does low-key things and leaves. So now you have Elix Skipper by himself again. Pretty much, I believe he was by himself for maybe a month or two. He does have his last televised match in April, which he loses to none other than Shark Boy. Oof. So that really is a great way to just end your career in TNA, is losing to Shark Boy. One match I do want to mention in particular that he has during this late period is he has a 2-minute match with Shinsuke Nakamura on an Explosion episode. It's a crazy match. It's 2 minutes, but yeah, you get to see a young Shinsuke Nakamura just beat the hell out of him. So if you want to see that, really easy to find on YouTube. But pretty much after that match, he just asks for his release and gets released.
And he doesn't really do a hell of a lot after that. There's no big stint on the indies. There's no grand tour. He kind of just retreats into civilian life, apart from his final match, which I believe happened in 2009 and would take place against, a familiar name, one we still know and I don't love, but he exists. I guess I'll confirm that he exists. But yeah, a very young Tyler Black, also known as Seth Rollins, for what was the promotion again? I don't even know.
The promotion was an NWA No Limits promotion. This was in Iowa City, Iowa, in a building that looks like there's maybe 30 people there. This was very early Tyler Black. This probably was just when he was starting being a thing. He has to be no older than 22 here. He's just so young here. He is not the Seth Rollins that you know of now. He is Tyler Black. He's not even Tyler Black ROH either. This is even way before that as well. So that shows you how early this match is. But it's really cool that, you have Elix Skipper's final match against a guy who is probably one of the top 5 most well-known wrestlers now. So it's kind of cool.
It's a match that the ring is way too small. The roof is way too low. For whatever reason, Elix Skipper busts out another rope walk here. That became his signature spot. He was doing that in every match, and it just felt wildly inappropriate to be doing in this Iowa tough shed. It's a long match. it's a bit rough in spots because obviously like Elix Skipper probably showed up like an hour before the match started, and Tyler Black is still a bit green here. And then Elix Skipper's career ends with a babyface promo from Seth Rollins, who thanks the crowd and then talks about how Skipper is like gave him a test and whatever. It's the pits, man. Like, I did not need to listen to this promo in Iowa, and Elix Skipper is gone. That is his career in wrestling. It started at the Power Plant in 97. It ended with Tyler Black in an Iowa Tough Shed in 2009. And everyone was just sort of left wondering what could have been.
That's basically what the discussion was online for a good 10 years after the rope walk spot, which is what could have been with him. He does really cool stuff, but the follow-up to the really cool stuff is not there. Like, the rope walk spot does not lead to the finish of the match. There's still a good few minutes after that. And then he gets pinned in the match too. So it's like, what are we even like? It's just the way that the match. And again, this is probably not really Elix's fault. They did not have good agenting back in TNA. And, obviously they didn't have good agenting to help his gimmick because they didn't really have good match agenting. I mean, if you watch the match, it's a great match, but there's so much insanity. They do top rope moves and they're kicking out. He does a spear off of the, I believe Chris Harris does that spear where the guy's standing on the top rope and he spears him. And it's really cool, but does it lead to the pin? No, it's just, there's a lot of weird things like that. And that's kind of like what Elix Skipper's career is, which is really cool stuff, but it leads nowhere. He teams up with really cool guys, but they kind of have something. I'm not going to, Diamonds in the Rough's not cool, but teaming up with Triple X, teaming up with Team Canada, that was cool. It got him elevated a little bit, but there was nothing after that helped him at all. Anything after Team Canada really didn't help him. They kind of were doing something with him and Kid Romeo where they were teaming, but there's a couple of promos where they're like, oh, let's dance, but let's not dance together because they didn't want to be whatever. And I'm like, all right, whatever. At least that's something. At least there's something there. Like Triple X, there wasn't really anything. Like, they kind of did promos, but mostly it was Daniels talking. Skipper kind of talks a little bit, but he really didn't get to show any of his gimmick, any of his personality whatsoever. He showed more personality in the Extreme Blade entrance than pretty much all of TNA. And all he did was go out there and dance, and he did a couple of flips, and everyone was into him. I just feel like there was, like I mentioned before, it's like the game in Price is Right. He's going up the ladder, he's going up the hill, and he's at the top of the hill with the cage walk, and then there's just goes right down, and there's nothing there. There is no follow-up. There is no follow-up feud with him and Daniels, which could have been awesome. I would have even not liked, but I would have been okay with a feud between him and David Young as long as long as we had something. We had nothing. It was just Diamonds in the Rough, and then one day they just didn't show up anymore, and that was it. And I was fine with them not showing up anymore, but you could have at least done a feud with them just to kind of give them something to do. They just didn't care anymore, and I didn't care. And it just sucks because Elix Skipper, he's a great wrestler. Everyone still talks about him now.
Simon says there shall be no feud between David Young and Elix Skipper.
Again, I wouldn't have enjoyed that. I'm just saying it would have been okay.
Don't even put that out there. Like, it's still a possibility. They're both still alive, I guess. When I think of Elix Skipper, his entire career has been reduced down to an 8-second clip that took 2 minutes to set up. And that was part of a 11-year career that's largely been forgotten. And I think it's sort of sad because we talked about how great that tag team match was. If you took out the cage walk spot, it's still one of TNA's greatest tag team matches ever. And certainly up until that point, it had everything you could possibly want. It had emotion, it had stakes, it had violence, it had drama, and it had a really cool move. Although Christopher Daniels also jumps off the cage like immediately after the cage walk. And that kind of is just a little bit about that confusion, and just maybe everyone was trying to do a little too much in TNA, as you said, Tim. When you think about the character or lack thereof of Elix Skipper, you started to talk about this, and I really want to hammer this point home. This was a bigger issue with TNA, that they just didn't know how to develop talent. It's not that they didn't know, they just sucked at it. And you have to look no further than a lot of those X Division wrestlers from 2003, really up until 2007, 2008, when a lot of them start getting older, they start better understanding who they are in the business as well. But AJ Styles is just like that TNA guy. For years, he's just that white meat babyface Mr. TNA guy. And then he sort of links up with Christian's Coalition and he starts, exploring the comedic side of his character. And eventually he becomes comfortable being more than just this guy who can really wrestle. Jay Lethal, great wrestler all the way back and when he first shows up in TNA, but he had no character. Like, what was Jay Lethal early on, really up until he starts doing that Black Machismo gimmick? Jay Lethal was just the blandest guy ever who could work a good match. And TNA did nothing with that until he started doing impressions, and then that became a thing. And I don't know, it felt like that's something that should have happened earlier in his career. And for me, the biggest thing, and we talked about this in our TNA World X Cup video, and I'm going to talk about it again, Petey Williams. People loved Petey Williams, but his gimmicks were, in order, Canada, Baby Scott Steiner. That was it. They never explained his character. They never gave us a reason to invest in Petey Williams. The thing about Primetime Elix Skipper is the primetime gimmick, this diva professional athlete gimmick. It could have worked. And we know it could have worked because in 2006, WWE steals it for Montel Vontavious Porter. MVP is Primetime Elix Skipper a year later. I'm a big athlete, I'm a star, I'm arrogant, I have the worst finisher in the history of professional wrestling.
It's his finisher, yes.
MVP uses the play of the day. He calls it the playmaker, but a lot of the stuff Elix Skipper did, MVP ends up doing, and it works for MVP because WWE spent the time to develop the character, to not just give him a backstory, but to help understand his motivations, why he was wrestling in the first place. That's what we never got with Elix Skipper. And the primetime gimmick could have worked. I think a Blade gimmick could have worked with Elix Skipper. I think you could have done so many things in TNA with Elix Skipper. I'm not going to go be Booker T and say, well, this guy could have been a world's heavyweight champion. But if you look at all the things he could do in the ring, like Booker T said, he could mat wrestle, he could high fly, he could do anything you could possibly want from a worker. And when he was given time to be a character, you could see the green shoots there. You could see what could have been, and we never get that. And it just, to me, it's sad because when I went back and I sat down and I really watched a lot of Elix Skipper matches, I was just like, damn, we really let one get away here, because there weren't a lot of people doing what he could have done at that point in time. I mean, even the X Division guys were kind of in awe of the high flying stuff Elix Skipper could do. But unlike a lot of those guys, his striking was really good. I mean, he had the kickboxing background. That's something that never gets leaned into. He could have been a kickboxing guy. I mean, and then that's a gimmick WWE gives to Sylvester Takai, of all people. Barf. And yeah, there was just so much you could have done with Elix Skipper. And I really enjoyed going back and watching, especially those two tag team matches with America's Most Wanted, because they are really, really good matches. When you look at TNA when Elix Skipper was at its highest, and it was a brief moment, they never did anything with him. And then you look at similar wrestlers in TNA, like Eric Young. Eric Young in 2004, 2005 is just like that guy in Team Canada. What would you say is the difference between Elix Skipper and Eric Young? And what did Eric Young have? Did Eric Young have anything that Elix Skipper didn't have? Or am I just missing something here?
At first, no. Because, yeah, like you mentioned, Eric Young was maybe third or fourth on the ladder in Team Canada. You had Bobby Roode, you had Petey Williams, and then you had some other giant where, they had A1, who you always like to mention. They also had another giant guy as well. And then Eric Young was usually like fourth tier. He actually took a lot of losses at the beginning, a lot of pins. It wasn't until they just wanted to make him a comedy character, and then Eric Young got pushed all the way up the ladder. He was always on TV, always in feuds with people. He won the damn belt. He won the TNA belt. I believe he's won every single TNA belt at this point. I believe because he even won the women's tag belts. So, yeah, they did do a lot of things with him. Like, if Elix Skipper could have had just 25% of the amount of care and push that they gave to Eric Young, he could have been easily X Division champion, if not more, because they just didn't care about him. They basically used him as a jobber. TNA used Okada better than they did Elix Skipper, and they didn't use Okada well at all. So that's telling you something.
That is telling us something. And the thing about Elix Skipper is that he was a better wrestler than Eric Young at this time. Like, Eric Young, name one. It's not that Eric Young was a bad wrestler at this time, but he was very unmemorable. There's no matches with Team Canada involving Eric Young in 04-05 that are must-watch matches. He was just a guy who could have a very basic match in the ring, and it was good, but he wasn't doing the things Elix Skipper did. And it just worked out the way it worked out. You can't go back, change history. And it's just, I do think one of the biggest what ifs I have in wrestling is, what if someone put the time and care into developing that Elix Skipper character? Because I think you have, like Booker T said, an intercontinental champion on your hands. I'm not saying world heavyweight champion. I'm not going that far on that bus. And I'm certainly not giving him the Skipper of Elix gimmick, but you could have had something. There was something there. And that being said, I would highly encourage you to go back and watch those 2 tag team matches with America's Most Wanted, because they are 2 of the better things TNA put out in maybe all of the 2010s, maybe if ever.
Yeah, just watch the matches, but like, don't care about the cage walk, because the rest of the match is great. Even that first cage match they have, which was like a year and a half before the cage walk, is better, I think, because it's more of a tag team match. There's more of a story behind it. The second one obviously had more stakes behind it, but they're both fantastic matches. And honestly, the Elix Skipper matches that he has, we mentioned the one with Tyler Black. That's not a bad match. It's actually pretty good. The matches he has in Japan are really good. Like we said, we watch his matches now and we're like, why didn't more things happen here? You have newer wrestling fans who watch that cage spot and wonder what happened with Elix Skipper. And then you look at his Wikipedia page and you realize he didn't do anything before or really after that cage walk spot. And he just needed that little kick in the butt to just move him up a little bit. I don't even think he got maybe 2 X Division title shots after that match. Like, he didn't get anything. And you would have thought they would have given him something after that.
But you know what? The biggest upset of all, the biggest thing Elix Skipper somehow never did in TNA? Would you like to take a guess?
He never wrestled Randy Savage.
Well, I mean, that's true, but I'm going to shock you right here, because this has come up multiple times in several other videos. Elix Skipper never had a TNA ladder match. Go figure that one out.
Wow, that is surprising, because he was in like every other gimmick match that they had, and he wasn't in that one. All right, that is weird. Wow, because they had about 50 of them. So, all right.
Brian Christopher gets a. Well, I guess Brian Lawler, he gets a ladder match. Dusty Rhodes gets a ladder match in TNA, but Elix Skipper, nah. You go with Simon Diamond and figure it out.
Jeff, consider it done. We're going to solve your problem.
Go
right
get
now.
him, guys. Good luck.
So there you go. That's our very long rant video on Elix Skipper and how multiple promotions should have done more with him. But anyway, tell us what you think in the comments below. Make sure you give us a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. You can check out the Touchback, which is Cheyenne's channel. You can also check out my channel, which is Wrong Sports. Links are also in the description below. And just remember, if Simon Diamond is in your match,
well, there's 2 things you got to remember. 1, he needs to say Simon Says, or otherwise you shouldn't do it. And 2, if he invites you to join the new stable he's forming with David Young, get the hell out of there.